They say the mind is the strongest fortress, that our thoughts, memories, identity, no one can touch them. But what if that fortress has cracks? What if someone sneaks in, erasing, rewriting, whispering lies until they become truths? Tonight, I want to tell you about people whose minds were invaded, not by ghosts, not by fiction, by real people with real power, and by secrecy. Case A, the Montreal experiments, Dr. Ewan Cameron's psychic driving, Montreal, late 1950s, 1960s. Imagine going to a hospital for help hoping to heal from depression, anxiety, or maybe a mental illness. You believe the doctors. You trust them. In 1957, at the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal, many patients did just that. Among them, a woman named Velma Orlico, who had gone in for postpartum depression, or another Jean Steele, deeply shaken after losing a child. They believed they were in safe hands. But Dr. Donald Ewan Cameron had other ideas. He wouldn't just treat. He wanted to erase, to strip away what made someone themselves and start over. His tools were horrific. He called one method depatterning. He'd bombard patients with high-voltage electroshock, often multiple times per day, far more than usual. Then sleep therapy, long drug-induced comas, sometimes lasting weeks. In that dark, drug-fogged state, their minds were, and then, audio tapes. Messages first negative, meant to break them down, then positive, meant to build them back up, played for hours and hours, sometimes 16 hours in a row. Sometimes these recordings repeated hundreds of thousands of times. The idea was to drive them into believing something entirely new. One of Orlico's daughters later said her mother emerged from that hospital changed forever. She could no longer tie her shoes. She couldn't remember parts of her life. She was stripped of her sense of self. Steele's mother came home after months of treatment, but she was not the woman she had been. To make matters worse, almost none of them had agreed to this. Consent was murky. Deception was used. The project was funded in part by the CIA via a front called the Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology. MKUltra called this Sub-Project 68. The revelations came decades later. Lawsuits, personal journals, interviews. Survivors, families, advocates piecing together what was done. And the horror wasn't just in what was done, but in what was believed possible. That someone could try to rewrite who you are. Case B, Patty Hearst and the SLA, 1974-1976, USA, February 4th, 1974. A San Francisco heiress, 19-year-old Patricia Hearst, is kidnapped from her apartment by a radical group known as the Symbionese Liberation Army. You'd think that with her fame and family background, the world would see her as a victim. It did at first, but in the months that followed, something strange, terrible happened. Hearst began to adopt her captor's ideology. She changed her name to Tanya. She participated in bank robbery. She stood by their violence. Was she brainwashed? Coerced? Maybe both. She claims the SLA held her in isolation, threatened her, and exposed her to intense psychological pressure. Fear for her life. Fear for her loved ones. Deprivation, threat, confusion, all tools to break resistance. When surveillance photos showed Meet Tanya joining SLA members in a bank heist in April 1974, the world was stunned. This was no longer just kidnapping. It was identity reversal. At trial in 1976, Hearst's defense argued she had been psychologically manipulated, lost her free will under duress. But the jury didn't buy it fully. She was convicted, sentenced. Later, her prison terms were commuted. Eventually, she was pardoned. But for many, the story raised a chilling question. How far can someone's mind be bent before it is no longer their own? Case C, Colleen Stan. Girl in the box, 19771984, USA, May 19, 1977. Colleen Stan, 20 years old, hitchhikes. Two people offer her a ride. She takes it. A few hours later, shotgun, knife, abduction. She is taken by Cameron Hooker and his wife Janice to a house in Red Bluff, California. She is held, alone, hidden. For 7 years, Colleen lives in a world turned inside out. She's chained, locked in a wooden headbox under the bed for 23 hours a day. Silence, darkness, torture. She's told there as a secret group called The Company, watching her family that if she tries to escape, they'll be harmed. She signs a slave contract under threat. Her captors force her into submission using all the tools: fear, deprivation, lies. And yet, she never stops believing that if she tries, she might be killed. She modifies her behavior to survive. She tells her story afterward. She was controlled, terrified, daily. In 1984, Janice helps her escape. Janice testifies. Cameron Hooker is tried, convicted, given over 100 years in prison. Colleen Stan's life is ruined, and yet she lives. Her story is a reminder. A free will can be twisted, but a human spirit can endure. Case D, Jonestown, Jim Jones' Deadly Promise, Guyana, 1978. Jim Jones was more than a preacher. To many, he was father. He was prophet, protector. He preached love, equality, then paranoia, fear, isolation. He moved his people's temple from the United States to Guyana, cut them off, told them the world was against them. November 18, 1978. Over 900 men, women, children drink poisoned Flavor Aid, cyanide, at his command. Suicide, murder. Obedience. How did so many go along? Because for years they were conditioned, threatened if they left, told the outside world would come for them, surrounded by loyalty tests. Trust only Jones. Fear death if you question. Break free? You put your family, your soul, your place in the world at risk. Survivors later spoke. The outside world heard. The tape recordings, the documents, the horrors. The tragedy is both a story of mass death and mass persuasion, of belief warped by control. Case E, The Forgotten Shadow, Montreal's legacy. Today, the Montreal experiments didn't end quietly. In the late 1970s and 1980s, survivors and families sued. They dug up files. They told journalists. In 1977, for example, the CIA's role finally came to light publicly. People like Velma Orlico, her name, once unknown, became symbols of abuse disguised as medicine. Lives shattered. Memories stolen. And while some compensation was made, the scars ran deeper than lawsuits could reach. What threads run through all these stories? Power and trust. People trusted institutions, doctors, cult leaders, abductors. Once trust is gained, it's used like a lever. Isolation, cut off from family, the outside world, from information. Without comparison, the imposed reality becomes the only one. Fear and threat. Fear of punishment. Fear for safety. Fear for loved ones. Fear becomes the gatekeeper between belief and resistance. Repetition, sensory assault. Tapes, drugs, electric shocks, lights, darkness, messages repeated. The mind can only guard itself so long. And the hardest question, when someone acts under that pressure, is it still their choice? These stories are not folklore. They are not horror movies. They are real. Names, dates, faces, lives ruined, minds invaded. Each one asks, how free are we really? How much of what we believe was given to us? By someone else? But there's hope too. Hope in survivors speaking. In laws, in ethics. In shining light on what was hidden. If this feels heavy good, let it wake something in you. Ask questions. Listen for whispers that aren't yours. Protect yourself, because your mind, your memories, your identity are worth fighting for. Thank you for joining me. If you want more stories, darker corners, untold names, tell me. Let's remember them together.